Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today, we are discussing Roboute Guilliman'S planned expansion of Ultramar. A general spoiler warning to begin here, as I will be discussing events from across the Warhammer 40k universe. So you have been warned, but with that said, let's waste no time and just jump straight in. Okay, so it's been so long since we ended the Dark Imperium trilogy that it almost feels like we don't really know what secondary storylines are going to be continued. What storylines from there are going to matter as we move forward. Of course, the main driving force will clearly be Guilliman'S next stage of Indomitus, his desire to cross the rift in force and bring relief to the other half of the galaxy, to prove to the dark half of the Imperium that they have not been forsaken. But what else? What other narratives are clearly going to be continued, developed during this saga? Well, Roboute Guilliman'S planned expansion of Ultramar, and the difficulties that come along with that, is most definitely one of the storylines I expect to see. And one, given recent events, I think we can safely say we definitely will see. And that is because it's received a little interesting update within the recent Dawn of Fire series finale, The Silent King. Now, as a recap, within the very first Dark Imperium novel, we got our first real glimpse at the reborn Roboute Guilliman'S attempts to save the galaxy. And we really got to see how profound the Primarch's struggle was. How dismayed he was internally by the Imperium he had returned to find. And how it was a battle of politics against his own people, as much as it ever was on the battlefield against the enemy. And it was revealed, in an effort to counteract his mistakes of the past, Roboute had ordered his home realm of Ultramar to be greatly expanded. Not just back to its ancient 500 world size of the Great Crusade, but even bigger, beyond even those ancient borders, incorporating worlds that had never had ties to Guilliman and Ultramar at all. And worse still, for those already wary of the Primarch, he was taking rulership of all of those worlds from the Imperial governors there, handing it over to his Astarte sons. However, said the Primarch, and a touch of steel entered his voice, I should have done better. By reducing Ultramar to a size that could be protected effectively by one chapter, while the Ultramarines fulfilled their many obligations elsewhere, I reduced Ultramar's effectiveness as an example and as a bastion. He looked up, a sincere expression on his face. I was mistaken. Silence greeted these words. To most of the people in the room, he was effectively a god, and gods did not make mistakes. Furthermore, my command a decade ago that all treaties of independence were to be immediately rescinded, and the 500 worlds reincorporated into this realm, has not been fully enacted. The efforts to reconstitute Greater Ultramar, that is the ancient 500 worlds, have not proceeded as well as I would have liked. I am angry with those Imperial commanders who will not submit to Ultramar's rule. I am disappointed with those commanders that pay lip service to my command, yet continue to put their own interests above those of greater humanity. Ultramar appears to be coming back into its original form, but it is a sham. Several representatives of certain worlds looked very uncomfortable. Guilliman pointed an armoured finger at the star map. This is my vision for Greater Ultramar. It will be put into effect immediately. As I cannot rely on the goodwill of local government to do my bidding, I am of today reinstating the ancient offices of the Tetrarchy. 4 noble members of the Adeptus Astartes, whom I have chosen as much for their acumen as statesmen as for their abilities as warriors, will be installed as sector commanders to oversee the reorganisation of this realm along lines that I, and I alone, shall decree. They will be provided with all authority to pursue my aims as they see fit, whether diplomatically or militarily. He let the threat hang on the air. They will furthermore be entrusted with the defence of these sectors, and when peace comes, with their rebuilding and further development. And so, this move was, as expected, controversial to the mortals of the Imperium, the educated few who have little knowledge of the Primarchs other than it is they who are the reason the Emperor is stuck upon the throne. That it was the Primarchs and their legions who pushed the Imperium to the brink of destruction. Yes, they know Roboute Guilliman was the famed Lord Commander who rebuilt the Imperium during those dark days of the Scouring. But here he is now returned, already having created Space Marine forces that are legions in all but name. And now he is expanding his own realm, breaking the decrees he himself set in place. And worse still, forcefully taking control and power from the mortal governors and placing it in the hands of his own Space Marine sons. And so, honestly, when you lay it all out like that, you can see why many mortals are beginning to fear and doubt Guilliman. Because for all his good intent, he is playing straight into the history of ruination. And well, this underlying storyline, as it were, has been a big talking point for me. A hugely interesting situation to watch and debate. And I was very curious to see how and if it would play out. If we would see Ultramar's expansion intertwined with the discovery of the hidden history of Imperium Secundus, which we saw transpire within Dark Imperium Godblight, or if it was something that would get a little left behind as Guilliman moved across the rift. Especially so seeing as now we've had the return of Lion L. Johnson, a major event in its own right, and something that was surely going to take Roboute's attention. And well, for me, as I said at the beginning, the recent Dawn of Fire novel The Silent King has really confirmed for me that this is going to continue to build, that the expansion of Ultramar is going to be a major event still. As although yes, the Dawn of Fire series is set before the Dark Imperium trilogy, it has obviously been written after, and it does such a great job of revisiting and building the problem of Guilliman's actions in regards to Ultramar, that it's clear it's a story that's going to continue rising to the surface. And I say that because we don't just see more governors fearing losing their power. We don't see Militarum or Navy commanders questioning the Primarch. We see the architect of the Primaris and the man arguably responsible for the return of Roboute Guilliman, not to mention his chief advisor, Belisarius Cawl, begin to fear what Roboute Guilliman's plans with Ultramar could mean. Upon a scaffolding, several artisans worked on a large glassaic window. For the moment the void shutters were firmly sealed, and the faint shine of a temporary atmospheric field glimmered inside it. The men were only 2/3 of their way through their work, but it was clear already what they were creating. It was a stellar map, and though stylized and full of whimsical detail, it clearly depicted Ultramar. Not the meagre handful of systems that Guilliman had reduced it to far back in time, but Ultramar as was. Score upon score of systems, containing the legendary 500 worlds. Guilliman had been open about reuniting his realm of old, and had said to those close to him, including Cawl, that he had made a mistake in breaking it up. For Cawl, the confession had been an unimportant detail, a little scrap of data to add to the unexplorable mountains of facts he guarded in his memory banks. Politics were not his focus. Seeing the map positioned where anyone who had business with the Primarch would see it, he realised what a declaration of intent Guilliman's decree was, and he saw that it was dangerous. Whatever his stated reasons for rebuilding Ultramar, to anyone looking on the endeavour from outside, it could only look like empire building. Cawl had not thought for a moment that Guilliman wished to usurp his father's throne, as certain parties within the Imperium feared. But seeing that map gave him pause, and despite his choice of brash personality, he felt the cold clutch of unease around his mechanical hearts. It's one thing to hear someone talk about their plans or intention. It's another thing entirely to see them actually do it. Hearing Guilliman talk about how he feels he made a mistake reducing Ultramar probably meant little to Cawl. The Primarch is the paragon of honour, of duty. Of course he'd be disappointed in what's become of the Imperium, regret that perhaps his actions played a part. However, to see that map, the extent of Guilliman's new desired empire, it's inescapable even to Cawl, a man who worked closely and knows the Primarch, that it is empire building. And it even makes him fear that maybe, just maybe, those doubts about Guilliman wanting to usurp the Emperor, even in the minutest possibility, could transpire. And that grips Cawl right in his heart. From Cawl's own faults, he had never feared or listened to those who claimed Guilliman wanted to be Emperor himself. Yet when confronted with the sheer scale of Ultramar's expansion, even Belisarius himself can't escape doubt. The sense that something may not be right. But seeing that map gave him pause, and despite his choice of brash personality, he felt the cold clutch of unease around his mechanical hearts. Again, I need to reinforce it here. Guilliman isn't doing anything wrong. I completely believe his intentions are noble, that he wants nothing more than to save the Imperium, that he wants Ultramar to be the bastion and example to the rest of the Imperium, which it is. However, it's clear, whether he knows it himself or not, he is building his own empire. He's no different to all his brothers, stuck in the nature the Emperor gave him. As it was his flaw in the heresy, it is really looking like being his flaw again. Because if even someone like Cawl is instinctively gripped by fear at Guilliman's actions, a man who knows him and trusts him, then there must be something wrong. It's perhaps the clearest sign we've had yet that this Imperium isn't made for the Primarchs, or a single Primarch alone. That's the problem with the Primarchs. They need their brothers to counteract them, to stop them being able to go too far. Without them, Guilliman's inner nature has no limits. Quite simply, there needs to be a choice between the uncompromising Great Crusade, a full-on return to the time of the legions and unbridled Astartes' power, and the era of self-governance that the Emperor intended for future humanity. Because with even Belisarius doubting Guilliman's actions, I don't see here how Guilliman can continue on this route without some form of uprising against him. Because even in that meeting where he revealed his plans for the Astartes Tetrarchy, he had to level a clear threat to anyone who opposed him. And so it's all just building and building the tension, with Belisarius's fear simply being the latest piece of evidence. Surprisingly, one that doubles down on the concerns regarding the Primarch, and one that lets us know more than ever there is most certainly going to be trouble ahead. But as always everyone, what do you think? What do you think is going to transpire in regards to Guilliman's Ultramar expansion? With these continued little sightings of mortal apprehension and fear, even now coming from the surprising source of Belisarius Cawl, is it clear more than ever there is going to be some form of uprising against it? Or do you think Guilliman will simply get more and more forceful in his actions? Could we even see his nature taking him too far, and him contemplating becoming Emperor? Especially with the fear of the Emperor now being a god? Or is the return of Lion L. Johnson the perfect counter to prevent Guilliman from doing so? Is this why it's L. Johnson who has returned now, when he was the original Primarch to be suspicious of Guilliman's nature? The Primarch who was willing to take him out. And what do you think of even Belisarius displaying fear at Guilliman's Ultramar expansion? Does it surprise you, given how close he is to the Primarch? Or is it only natural? As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. A huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.